wound up going to the Peabody Conservatory, studying piano there. And after a year, I kind of had a breakdown. That's a long story. That's also a long story. I kind of had what I was diagnosed as chronic tendonitis and was told I would never play piano again. I was 20 years old at this point. And it created the most beautiful divergence of paths in like a way that I never could have imagined, because I was not able to play music. I started playing by ear when I was 2. Most of my life was centered around music. Everything, you know, in my life was like based. I started performing at 5. I started gigging at 11. My entire identity was attached to piano and music. And when that moment happened, I was 19, and I couldn't move my hands. They just shook. I had no strength. I couldn't hold a fork. I couldn't turn a door handle. I couldn't do anything. I was totally in really bad shape. And I remember I would cry myself to sleep at night because I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. And it was kind of an existential crisis, because really what happened is I realized without the music that I was playing, I had no idea who I was. I was a stubborn person, and I didn't believe the doctors when they told me I wasn't going to play again. I thought I'd be able to heal. In the deepest part of my spirit and soul, I knew that I would be able to heal, but I also intuited that it was going to be a really difficult process. So I thought, well, you're, 20, like basically at that point I was 20. Even if you do heal from this, who knows how long it's going to take for you to be able to play the pieces, the concertos and stuff that I was doing. You could be 25, 28, 30. In the classical world, that might be too old to have a career at that point. So I started having this thought, like, wow, even if you can play again, you may be past your prime. You may not be able to have a career. What are you going to do? I really had to confront why I was doing what I was doing. Because it was like the why had to be that clear, because I knew how much work it was going to take to get it back. So unless I knew really why I was going to be doing what I was going to be doing and what that was going to be, with what intention, then why even bother to put what could be years of a crazy healing journey with no even known outcome. And I remember having this thought kind of hit me in bed one night, where there was something in me, like I actually had a perspective, a message, a point, something that actually was worthy to share with the world. Not me playing Rachmaninoff's music or Chopin's or Scarlatti or whatever. But what I realized was that, I needed that injury to happen. The way I view it now is my spirit actually shut my body down. And it did it because it knew that I was not actually going to be happy being a concert pianist. As much as I loved that music, I wasn't really doing it for me. I needed much more freedom, like artistic freedom within my life. And when you're on that path, I was practicing 8 hours a day. I didn't have a minute to even think about what I was doing. So when I couldn't play, it was just to create that space. So I was confronted with, well, what are you? Why are you really doing this? Who are you? And that was part of my healing. Everything in my life changed in a crazy way. And I tell my students this like all the time. I said, what's so crazy is I live exactly the life now that I actually wanted when I was a kid. I tour the world, I travel, I play with the most beautiful human beings who I love as people and musicians. The highest level music in the coolest scene that I didn't even know existed then. I had no idea there were people that you couldn't classify or put into a box of jazz or this or that. Like, I didn't know that weirdos existed, like, outside the box. But somehow I knew that that's who I was. Because it's one thing, to be able to interpret somebody else's music. You're seeing here, and then, okay, like, what's behind these notes? Like, what's being told in every phrase, in every harmony, in every, like, rhythm? What is the intention here? What am I communicating? But it's a different thing when then you want to become a creator and an improviser, because that's much more, I feel like, intertwined with life. And I think for me, I needed that period away from music to go that deep into the well of life. Because that's really what's needed, I feel like, to play music like Zorn's. that, you know, I mean, Zorn has talked about this. You know, for him, you know, a lot of times, like the musicians that he feels like a lot of times can play the music that he writes are the ones that have kind of embraced the totality of the history of music, like he has. People think that in a way he's avant-garde, but he's also very like he has so many loves of so many traditional things like along the way. He synthesizes them in his own way, but to be able to really, you know, walk in those waters, that's half of it. And then the other half of it, to really bring the other side, this cathartic side that he needs in the music, is really about the life side of it. John writes for the musicians most of the time. And he says that. He's like, I hang out with you guys, you know, we get into these conversations. I get inspired. I go home and I write a new album. Which is such a beautiful kind of like relationship to have, where somebody is using, you know, your connection in life and then thinking, here's a platform for Brian to be the best version of Brian, but I'm going to push him a little bit further.